Hello, and welcome to our panel discussion on how book covers are designed. For those of you who are new, Black and Brown Book Designers is a community organization formed to diversify the publishing industry by educating Black and Brown creators on book design roles through community gatherings and workshops. Our goal is to support entry-level to leadership design roles with opportunities and resources across covers, interior design, marketing, illustration, and art direction. To learn more, connect with us on Instagram, sign up for our newsletter, and visit our website for in-person and online events. Now let's get started.
So my name is Maithili and I'm from Bombay, India. And I currently live in Bangalore, and which is in the south of India. And I design books and book covers for a living, as well as because it's something which keeps me excited about every day. And but I was not always a book designer. Mm, I started with a bunch of things, right from designing for record companies to working with serious design firms, doing branding, packaging. And after doing that for about a decade, I met my husband, and and he lived in Delhi, and I thought, it will be exciting to move to a new city and try something new. And the new city urged me to try something new professionally also. And Delhi is the hub of all publishing houses in India. And but I had no experience or no exposure or no understanding of publishing at all, because at that time nobody considered really publishing as a serious profession, or book design as a serious thing to be done. It was more like a side thing. You do it because it's fun, and you do a one-off gig and you move on. But then I thought of giving it a shot, and I wrote to the art director then at Penguin. And I went and met her. She was kind enough to, you know, entertained me. And well, she said, "Okay, I like your work, but you have no experience in publishing." And I said, "You give me a chance, I'll learn." And my friends in advertising thought I was being really stupid, because I already had a career in advertising and design, and I was quitting that and moving to something totally new, and where they wanted me to give a test. And they were like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Why not? I want to try something new and learn something new." And there I was at Penguin, and that's where my journey began. And it's been around, I think, 15 years, and I'm still here. That means there is something really good about it, which has kept me here. I think also because designing for books is not just engaging, it is, or I wouldn't use the cliche challenging, but it is something which is new every day. Each book has a new story, each book has a new narrative, and that is what I think keeps me excited every day to come back and do this. Uh, Also, I know we are going to talk here about how to design a book cover, but I would like to say that there is no formula to it. And I think once I know the formula, I might just quit designing books. So, so that's what it is. And today I'm going to share a project with you all, which is very dear to me. And actually, I've been working on so many books for so many years with, fiction, non-fiction, crime, thriller, all kinds, famous, non-famous, banned books, everything. And it was really hard to choose something to share here. So I have chosen one project which is very dear to me, and very dear because it was not a regular book design project. and it allowed me to explore uh, a new design, or I wouldn't say new, a different design language, which is very close to where I come from, and it celebrates it. So I thought it would be, I don't know if I will be really uh, solving what we are here for, but uh, maybe, we all get something out of it. I hope so. So, so here's a little bit about the project. So this is for Harper Perennial. Harper Perennial in India publishes translations or English translations of books published in Indian languages. So there could be books which are written in any Indian language. There are many, many languages here, and the books get translated into English and they are published under Harper Perennial. And in 2017, they completed 10 years of publishing Harper Perennial, and they wanted to bring out their 10 bestseller books. They wanted to rejacket it, and they wanted to present them as a set, as a, as a range of books. So this really sounded exciting. I was very happy to, when this came my way, and I thought. And this is what the books looked like. They all came from different languages, originated in different languages. They had already been around in the market for many years. They already had multiple covers over the years in the original language as well as English. And they were all doing well because they were bestsellers. So there was no problem really to solve. Um, and all the facets of the story had already been explored uh, in the different versions. So, what is it really that you want to put on the cover and also make them look like a family was the challenge, and it was a difficult one because there are so many series designs and everybody there are a lot of ways of doing it, and but then how to what is it that one thing that we want to tell here. So we started with the so I would say we because it was not just me, because it is like most of the books it's always a collaboration. So we started with this whole thing of what is the story that we want to tell here. It is not about this one book. It is not about Harper Perennial. It is not about them celebrating 10 years. These are okay stories, but what is that big story that we want to tell here? And uh, and what came out through the discussions was, why don't we celebrate the languages where these books come from? Each language has their own script, it has its own alphabet. And how do we look and why don't we look at the alphabet as a visual? Why? Because eventually the alphabet is the visual language of the language. That's the visual representation. So we thought of taking the script, the alphabet, as the main story to tell throughout the books and treating it as a visual, looking at the forms, the counterforms, and exploring those. Well, having said that, it all sounded great and everybody was very excited about it. But there were few constraints and there were few challenges all along, and especially for a designer because you have an open canvas and now you're just given this space to go and do what you want, which is also sometimes difficult. So this is where I started. Uh, what if I take a letter from the title probably and work with that? I really like big bold type. So as a designer, I was very excited about just using big bold type. But then after sharing with a few people and the sales, etc., they came back and they said, which sometimes we as designers we're sitting in our own bubble and we don't really we only blame the sales and marketing, but sometimes it's good to hear them out also. So this came back as, probably this looks like a dictionary because each language has their own dictionary and they have their own covers. So will this look like a dictionary? Probably. So I said, okay, let me try something. Uh, then how about using the title and playing with the title? Um, but again, some titles were very long, some titles were very short, some titles had the same letters repeating. So, for somebody who doesn't read this script, it might just look like the same form repeated. So, while this is something which could work, I thought maybe we should give it another shot. And also the other thing with these books was they all were not the same genre. Some were fiction, some were non-fiction, some were poetry, some were written in the current time, some were really old classic. Uh, so there was nothing which was tying them in terms of content. So then the third route was, to take an extract from the text, original text, and work with it. So this seemed like a route which we all thought can, be explored because it gave us some flexibility to play around with, the type, etc. But somewhere I thought, while there is a lot of work being already done with Indian text, type, and there are a lot of foundries who are working with Indian type, and they're doing fantastic work. I thought somewhere it was getting static, it was getting a little rigid. Also, it was not possible to have the same quality of typefaces for all the languages because not same amount of work has been done in all languages. So also, I thought it also lacked the individuality of that language. So so I thought of um, collaborating with the calligrapher. Um, so Nikhil does like lot of experimental work, not the conventional calligraphy which you will do with a pen and a nib. He explores letters through uh, ink drop or through coconut husk, through whatever different media. So I thought of working with him and trying something with um, analog, with ink, paper, where where all the books originate, and so that's where this is where the route was kind of frozen. um, but then he also does a lot of free work. So I didn't want to restrict him by giving him. So we did a reverse engineering process where I didn't design the cover first. I didn't give him a size to work with. I just told him this is the text, and you draw and you interpret and you create what you feel like. And obviously, there was a little translation given by the editor with the text to know what he's writing, because otherwise, it's like, even we don't read all these languages. So, so that's where we started, and it was almost like, he just kept creating these. For each book, he created multiple variations of lettering and almost making it like a piece of art. And then was the task of putting it on the cover because, this was not planned. So I had to, it is, you may say it is a kind of uh, what do you say, haphazard process. It is not a planned thing. But thankfully, the art director then and the publisher, they were okay with going. And I would say I was lucky that, they were open to me experimenting and doing this. So that's what we did. Then came the practical part where, I had to figure out how I want to place the text, how I want to put the title, what do I want to do. Uh, One thing was, okay, we want to brand them as a set. So why don't we color code it? Why don't we put everything in, some kind of a container? But it's sort of, I thought it was taking away from the main story, which was the letters and the calligraphy and the uh, and all the drama that was happening. And that is the big story that we wanted to tell through these covers. So, so I dropped the boxes and thought I will let the text breathe, give it more white space. Sales doesn't like white covers, but somehow they were okay with it this time. And but then again, this whole lettering looked very static, very rigid, and I was not happy with it. A lot of times it happens that you try something and then you keep looking at it and then you come back and then you present it and then you yourself think that this was not really the best option. Um, and this is what it finally looked like, wrapped around sort of a jacket. Uh, I kept it simple with the type being slightly conventional or Garamond, but a little contemporary version of it, which is the Cormorant Garamond. And to play with the hierarchy, just the using the colors from the original artwork and playing with just the cases and the colors and keeping it as clean so that the main story, which is the lettering, is what shines. Mm, and this is what all of them look like together. Though a set, but because all the calligraphy is done with different tools, different colors, they have their own identity, but yet they look like a series. And it did really well, and it was much appreciated. And immediately in 2018, we had the next one to do. And I mean, you can't keep repeating the same thing again and again, but again, this was a kind of challenge. So this was the next 10 book series that I did. Here, what we tried to do was play with the bands of inks and the inks dripping into the alphabet. The story is the same, but told in a different manner. Um, so all this went well. We were all very happy. And then last year uh, came the third brief, and I was like, okay, now this is a bit too much because you can't keep telling the same story and without it dragging and without it getting boring. And there's only so much that you can do with one story. But the publishers were very clear that they wanted to go with the same idea and they wanted to stick to it. And I was like, okay. So, as a designer, I was tired of doing this same kind of, repetition and letters and all of that. So I thought, now let me again do the bold version because this is what I really think, uh, you know, uh, they really made the letters shine and all of that. So these were the three routes that I proposed. Um, and unfortunately, the sales came back and said, but the first option has the maximum recall. People remember the first cover and they want to see the same cover. I was like, I don't think so. Why would you want to say the same thing again and again? But here we were doing the same kind of treatment, but treating it almost like a wrapping paper now, making it more gifty, having that center box like a label. And so the point is, uh, sometimes some projects really excite you, but then sometimes they stretch and stretch. And but you but you have to keep innovating, keep trying to do something new. It's not that always what you want goes through, but that's okay at times. You can fight for it, but then after a point, uh, it's a collaboration. So that's what I thought, and I was like, okay. And the coincidence is just today I got my copies of these books, and they look good. But I would have loved, like to see the older version at least this time. And I'm just dreading that I don't get the fourth uh, series and I hope they don't do this any further. Though it's really, really nice that something is appreciated and people want you to do the same thing again. But I'm just dreading that this shouldn't happen again. Uh, and and that's about it. And I hope there was something which I could share or which you can take away from here. Um, what I also like to add is, um, because I came from this branding and packaging sort of background, I think it's sort of in our heads that I feel it's book design. A lot of times people say it's an art. It is an art, but it's also art which is going to sell something. So as designer, I feel you need to keep that in mind all the time while you express yourself. Your responsibility is always towards the content, towards the author, towards the reader. It's not like I felt like doing it, I did it, and it's always like a lot of times people think, oh, it's almost like creating a piece of art. Yes, anything you create is a piece of art, but you're creating it for a reason, for a purpose. So somewhere we should always remember that purpose, that I'm doing this for a reason, and then I can do my own thing. Like i I enjoy, like I love folk art, and I love to create patterns on, like as a side thing. But and I also try to use it whenever it is relevant for a book. But I can't say that I will only do this. So that is one thing. And if whatever is up in the shelf, if it at least makes the viewer come to the shelf and pick up the book, or stop scrolling and read about the book, or read the blurb of the book, I think as a designer, for me, it's like 70% of my job done. And on that note, I think I'll you know uh, pause, and I would, because I want to hear and listen to my friend here. And thank you so much, BNB. You're doing a fantastic job, and I look forward to attending more such sessions and learning from all of you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It is such a pleasure to come here and talk about uh, some of my projects with you. And of course, I'll be happy to take on a few questions after the presentation. So, what I have done is I just pulled out 5, 6 projects that I have worked on that have lessons for me, and probably you guys will also be able to share enjoy uh, some of my learnings, and you'll be able to take away some of it into your respective projects. So for those who are not so familiar with design world, normally the question comes that what do graphic designers and book designers do? And I feel we give visuals to authors' words. We give meanings and method to the visual chaos and pollution around us. We see the unseen, and above all, we curate visual experiences. A lot of it goes which is invisible, which is in your head and heart, and it is only through hands that we try to make it visible for the audiences. And there is a, like any other artist, a book designer, I as a book designer have my own set of fears and anxiety, and there's a constant dialogue and small battles that are going within me when I'm working on a project, and it is the final form, however small, is made visible to others. So without much delay, I want to take you to my first project, which is, can we switch? Yes. So, how I, as a designer, like to and have learned to integrate empathy into my projects. And reading the manuscript, more than often, I tend to develop empathy for the characters that are portrayed in it. I don't see this as a bad thing at all. Rather, it elevates my sense of engagement with the narrative. And the book I'm talking about is Mohsin Hamid's Last White Man, in which the protagonist Anders wakes to find that his skin has turned dark. His reflection is a stranger to him, and soon reports of similar occurrences across the land. A deep sense of profound loss wars with profound love. And this novel offers a chance to see one another face to face anew with transformation at its heart. Can we move on? So the central idea behind this cover design was to attempt at the idea of transformation and seeing something with a more human touch human touch and perception. And that's why I started playing with the idea of seeing something anew in a more graphical way. And I did some 6 to 8 options, and these are some of them. And can we see the final one? And this is the final one that got approved. It's a conceptual cover with the nuances of perception, transformation, and human touch in its graphical representation. The fonts, the colors, and the layout is not solely chosen in function of its legibility, but principally for its associative capacity also. So, and later on, the eye, the graphical representation of eye was in post production. We did a UV just on the eye and the eyeball, just to sort of elevate that sense of that tactility into the project. Can we move on? Yes, ambiguity. We all think ambiguity. Our school teachers were very ambiguous, but if you want to pick up design as a career path, it's not going to leave you, and certainly I deal with it on day-to-day basis. So the project I'm going to talk about happened during COVID times. We were bringing out a book on virus, on the world of viruses, and it's a lovely, fully illustrated book with rare photographs, illustrations, maps, and where you bring in science history together. And without being obvious, the cover exactly depicts the empire of viruses that the author talks about, with visual sophistication and maintaining the contextual appropriateness. So the challenge was, at that time there were a lot of books coming out from almost all publishers. There was virus images floating all around the media, and the world was kind of fatigued by the word virus and also by seeing those sciencey images. And while I started with that, but it took me, and nobody really, why I said that this was very ambiguous, because from publishers to editors to sales, we all were just grappling to pin that one idea that would differentiate the book from all those books that are coming out, and yet being a loyal servant to the subject within. And therefore I said, sometimes you just, as a designer, we just have to let ourselves just loose and let it float with the conviction that idea would emerge. And to my surprise, and it did. So can we see the cover? Yeah, so this is the cover, which does not show any sign of virus or a picture of virus, but it does bring in the elements that the author is touching upon through different species across the uh, uh, animal kingdom, to convey the idea of viruses, the history of the natural history of viruses. And it's a cover. You see there's a dragon on the left side. It sort of continues onto the back cover, and the tentacles of the octopus goes onto the front flap. So it's a nice, very neatly cohesive story that you weave in together. And I purposely kept type very simple because I like to have this balance going on. Okay. Can we move to the next one, please? Yes. So it's not, what you see on social media and on designers' websites and all the lovely awards and doing covers for best-selling authors, etc., is all good and it does happen. But also sometimes there is a flip side to that as well, and that as a designer requires a lot of courage and a lot of grace, because there is a lot of acceptance, but there is a lot of rejection as well. And it's really critical for someone who is trying to pursue a career into book design and publishing at large. So the book that I'm talking about here is the latest novel by Salman Rushdie called Knife. It's a searing and a deeply personal account of enduring and surviving, speaking out for the first time and in unforgettable detail about the traumatic event that happened in 2022. It's a gripping, intimate, and ultimately life affirming meditation of life, love, loss, and art. Uh, as a book designer, we work with different stakeholders, both internal and external, from commissioning editor, to the publisher, to sales, and to the marketing team and the author. And as a designer, you have to deal and listen to everyone's opinions and expertise and likes and dislikes. And with so many stakeholders, critical and opinionated feedback is bound to come. Taking all this feedback constructively with objectivity is actually an art. And working at a global company like me at Penguin Random House, some of the books are published globally, which means they'll be simultaneously published in the US, UK, Australia, India. And sometimes we decide to go with the same cover, but sometimes, depending upon the territory and the cover, we tend to change it. And this is one such example where, with all my heart and uh, empathy, I really wanted to attempt this cover, but it took a different route. Can we change the slide, please? So yeah, so I worked on Salman's last fiction book, which is called Victory City, and this is the cover, which was received really well. And therefore, I wanted to attempt the next book as well, which is called Knife, Change. And this was my visual response to something which is very simple, very stark, yet very meaningful. And change. So I thought of going something very graphical and going photographic on the back of the cover. And like I said, but at the end, change. Sales decided that, for this one, at least let's go with a global cover, and we are using this cover which is done in the US. So for a designer, like I said, going back to my point, it takes a lot of courage to accept. In a way, it's not rejection really, but still, it does feel like that. Can we move? Yes, it's not that designers are always working in their comfort zone and able to use the fonts that they like and the certain illustration or an imagery style that they like, because you as a designer, you have a problem or an opportunity at hand, and you have to sort of maneuver your skill set to submit to that. So this project was something which happened in 2018, I suppose, 18 or 19. Again, a global publication, and we felt that we would like to do India cover for ourselves. So I got a call from my publisher, and she wanted to talk about this really big book. And I very excitedly and fashionably entered in her room, and she started talking about the book, and she explained the manuscript, and she said the central theme to this novel is a king cobra. And she gave me the logic, and I agreed with the logic. But God help me, because I have a severe phobia of reptiles. Now, on one hand, I have this, as a designer, there's agreed to work for this literary giant, Amitav Ghosh. Also, he's a friend. And on the other side, that he's also a friend. So it was a huge challenge, and I just didn't know how to approach this project. And for a week, I was really grappling with, because I can't even grappling with my own fear, because I can't log on to Google and even do any kind of search, because images will pop up and I just cannot see them. So, but sometimes I developed a technique that if you leave a problem for some time, the ideas emerge. And kid you not, I had this dream other day that I could see the cover in my head, and it was a beautifully illustrated cover in botanical style. And I woke up next morning and I figured who could help me sort of put this illustration together, change. And I worked with a botanical illustrator based in Bangalore, and she sort of compiled this lovely serpent for us and peppered with these lovely flowers that are mentioned in the book. And then, for strangely, I integrated it with the type, and for those days, weeks, I was somehow not scared with the reptiles. So sometimes, the point I'm trying to bring home is that you do have to, as a designer, it's not always a hunky dory job. You do have to step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you do have to step out of your comfort zone in a way that you may not even like or may not be up your alley, really. Okay, change. I think this is the biggest currency when someone asks, why designers get that big paycheck, is because we can see what others cannot, and I really enjoy this aspect of my profession and my being, and change. Yeah, so the project I'm going to talk about is it's a very fresh project that we were So this is a paperback for Arundhati Roy's Azadi, which is a collection of her essays on language and public as well as private, and on the role of fiction and alternative imagination in disturbing times. And this year we decided to bring it a new personality, but author wanted not to go too far away from this cover. And um, when I looked at this cover for days, I just couldn't think like what new concepts I could bring in. But then one day there was an idea that popped up, and I picked the title itself, and I tried to give it a spin, change. And this is what I sort of put a typographic collage to illustrate the ideas that she's talking about without going too far away from the existing cover. And this book comes out in June. So, uh, yeah, I think it's our ability to see the unseen and then giving it a visual personality by transforming your imagination to reality. Change. Another example I thought I'll share. This is an old project though, but this was about an author who left his IT job and bought a farmhouse in the outskirts of Mumbai, and was decided to do organic farming there. And these were his memoirs. Uh, so I was flying into Delhi from somewhere, and I saw these paddy fields from the airplane, and something happened, and happened. That's fine. Move, change. And then when I reached my table in the office next day, I saw my keyboard, and something happened, and I thought I have an idea, and I decided to marry the idea. Change. I got this grass, and I tried to marry both the visuals together, and I actually made this change and married the two visuals and made it something made a bespoke image basically for the cover, and it's a wraparound, and the keys were then finally embossed, and this cover was received really well, again to illustrate the fact that sometimes you see something and it stays with you as creative individual, it stays with you, and then when you see B, you try to marry A and B to arrive at C. Change. And this aspect is very close to my heart, and I also respect the fact that one of the abilities that we have is that we can actually apply our hands to our imagination, and therefore I really like to uh, uh, press upon the importance of the power and the beauty in making. And the book that I'm going to talk about is something called The Blind Matriarch. Uh, A book cover basically is an extension of an author's voice and words, which is accurate, intriguing, and interesting to look at. As a designer, my job is to set the stage and create the right atmosphere, and above all, to hold your attention. It is that 10 to 30 seconds that the decision to buy a book is made or not made if the cover manages to reel the audience. Therefore, creating a personality that is strong and effective enough to hold browsers' attention, originality is one of the feature that plays an enormous role, and therefore, if you create something, it will always remain original than buying from the existing imagery from agencies, etc. And that aspect is very close to my heart. Change. So this is a book called The Blind Matriarch, where this old lady, it was a piece of fiction where the old lady uh, sits in her balcony in her last days, and she's very fond of embroidery, and these two, this crow and the barbet, becomes her friend. So I picked up that idea and I tried to figure an embroidery artist to do this embroidery piece for the cover. Change. And she worked, and initially our initial idea was also to have typography in it, but somehow eventually typography didn't work for the final piece. But change change but then finally I integrated with something similar typography, and I integrated with the embroidered piece. The thing is, it aligns with the narrative in two ways. One, what is depicted here, the characters are appropriate to the content, but also the style. So, when you read the manuscript, a lot of ideas emerge, but as a designer, how do you pin them down? What would work and what wouldn't work is also your ability, which comes with experience, with being perceptive, and with being sensitive to the content. So for me, each day is a new story, one that is more hopeful, more beautiful, more meaningful, and more magical. My job is to reveal yet to hide, to intrigue but not to give away, to raise curiosity but not to provide answers, and treading that balance between clarity of thought and yet embracing ambiguity is the toughest part of my job. How much is too much? Knowing that makes all the difference. Thank you.
What is your favorite genre to work on?
I think I really like nonfiction because while it is sometimes constrained because you have the facts and you have to express the facts, or sometimes the brief comes with very direct imagery, prescribed imagery. But I feel a lot of times it also gives you the freedom to think differently, to experiment, because it is almost like putting across your own viewpoint on that particular subject. So I really like doing nonfiction, though I'm sure most of us here may not may not agree, but I really enjoy doing nonfiction. Yeah.
What advice or resources you would give to an inspiring designer trying to get into the industry?
That's a difficult one, actually, uh, because after you heard what I said, I don't think there could be one thing. But what I feel like is, as a designer, not just a book designer, one should be very open to seeing not just what is happening in their category, like a book designer looking at other book designers' work, but generally all kind of design, even if it means product design, even if it means all kinds of arts, because you never know what might lead to something. Like the beautiful example what Gunjan shared about the shot from the airport, from the airplane and the people. So you never know what might lead you where. So it's important to keep your eyes and mind open to seeing different kinds of things, and good aesthetics takes goes a long way, I guess. Yeah.
You guys are reading a manuscript. What are some things that you kind of look for? Is it the scene, or is it a certain word, a certain passage that kind of like sparks an idea in your mind? What happens?
A lot of times in my case, and I mostly read my fiction cover briefs, um, I think the brief sort of makes this structure in your head, and you're trying to fit things in the best way possible. Um, Also, trying to offer something which is fresh. So, it partly is based on our just earlier question that uh, if you are generally aware about what's going on in the world, not necessarily in design, uh, the way mind sort of functions and it sort of cross pollinates the ideas, it will be able to offer something new. And therefore, when you see a word, it will strike certain imagery into your head. And then, how do you cross pollinate it with typography? I mean, even typography, for a lot of people who don't know design, I mean, it requires hell lot of research, because it needs to marry to the content. So it's 50-50, and imaging is as important as typography, in equal measure. So point is, you can't really say what one is looking for. When you read, something clicks, something happens. A lot of designers I know also sometimes, just not to get caught up in the web of imagery and authors' ideas, they also read the manuscript from backwards to forward, so that they pick out nuances as surprises to them. And it's a very refreshing way to look into it.